This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called Plein Air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it Plein Air. Others say Plein Air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Well, today you're going to hear how this all began because our guest, Ned Mueller, was there at the very beginning. We'll get into that in a minute. I hope you're doing well, and I hope if you are not plein air painting yet that you get started and try it. It will change the way you paint. It'll change your perception, your values, your colors. Everything will change for you. And I hope you're getting outdoors and painting, and it really makes a difference. Even, for your first experience, look out the window if it's easier, but just paint what you see. This weekend, I'm really excited because I'm going to be going out and painting bluebonnets here in Texas. I'm coming to you from Austin, Texas. Here in Texas, we have fields of wildflowers. This time of year, we get fields of bluebonnets, which are essentially the same as lupines, which you find in California and back east and a lot of other places. But we get fields of them. And the reason that is that when when LBJ was president, or was governor, his wife, Lady Bird, gave away bluebonnet seeds at the driver's license bureau, and she told people for 2 or 3 years, just throw them on the roadways, on the sides of the roadways. And so when you drive through Texas during bluebonnet season, assuming that the conditions are right, you get these massive fields of bluebonnets. So I'm going to go paint them, and it's a little weird having the grass look blue, but it's kind of fun. It's a challenge, and so I'm looking forward to that this weekend. We are thrilled that this podcast has now had over 1.5 million downloads, and it's being heard in 90 different countries. If you're outside of the United States, welcome. Thank you for listening. My goal is to spread the plein air movement. We've had a handle in at least partially spreading the plein air movement across the United States. We're going to talk about some other things too with Ned in a minute, but we are trying to get more and more events, and I'm really pleased to hear about many, many more plein air events throughout Europe, and that's exciting. So wherever you are, if you're getting people together to paint plein air, let me know about that so that we can honor you and give you applause. We are also honored that the Plein Air Podcast has been rated, get this, number one in FeedSpot's 2021 Top 15 Podcast list. We hope we'll make it again for 2022 when that comes out towards the end of the year. You can subscribe wherever you get podcasts, whether it's on iTunes or Spotify or otherwise. And it's really weird for me because I am driving in my car and I have podcasts in my car and I can look over to the screen and see my face and listen to my voice. It's really kind of weird, but that's just the way of the world these days. On today's interview, after today's interview, we will have a marketing minute and I will answer art marketing questions. I also have a separate podcast called the Art Marketing Minute Podcast. And if you are ever not able to listen to this and you want that podcast on your own, go there and listen to that. Now, I got to tell you something. We try to get the community of plein air painters together. When we started Plein Air Magazine, I don't think there were maybe 3, 4, 5 plein air events nationwide. Today, there are over 300 of them. And there's a lot of things that you can do to get to scratch that plein air itch, whether you're watching people paint or observing or maybe being a part of it. But we try to get the family of plein air painters together annually at what we call the Plein Air Convention. And we've had to cancel each of the last 2 years, but we're coming back this year. We're going to be in May in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And New Mexico has basically put the handcuffs on, right? So they have said, we have to limit the number of people that we can bring. And so normally Before COVID, we had 1,200 people signed up, but we have to back off on that. And so, people canceled because of COVID. So now we're still catching up. We only have 97 seats left because we're limited to 775 people. That includes faculty and staff and the people already registered. We only have 97 seats left. So if you're thinking about going to the Plein Air Convention, connecting with the Plein Air community, watching the great, really brilliant artists on 4 different stages, we've got 60 different faculty members. Make sure to sign up at pleinairconvention.com. I should also mention now, at the time, if you're listening to this in the future, let's hope this is all changed. But at the time I'm recording this, we are in the midst of this Ukraine conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And I was planning on taking a trip of artists to Russia to paint in September. I've been working on it for years. It's been a big project. Well, of course, I had to cancel it. We'll go back someday if it makes sense. Once all this stuff is settled, because the Russian painters are brilliant. But in the meantime, we're going to change this and go on a painting trip to New Zealand. Yes, we are going to New Zealand. We're going to paint New Zealand. We're going to be there for 10, 12 days. And I took a group to New Zealand before, and we had an incredible time. And this time we're fine tuning it. So it's going to be even more painting. And we're going to some places that people wanted to spend more time in. For instance, there's an area called Glenorchy, which it was so beautiful. We could have done 10 paintings there, but we only had time to do 1 painting. But now we're going to stay overnight there. We're going to have more time, and we're going to be able to paint there. That's, just so you know, where The Hobbit was filmed, a part of it. And we also are going to Milford Sound. Now, before we went to Milford Sound, but we didn't have time to paint it. It was a long trip down there. This time we've chartered a giant boat for our group, and we're going to be able to go there by boat. We're going to stay overnight on the boat, have dinner on the boat. We're going to be able to stop and paint in Milford Sound, which is really incredible. So we can only take 47 people, and already I think 9 of those seats are already taken. So go and find out about it at paintingnewzealand.com. All right. Now, the last thing I want to tell you about, we've got a lot going on. People say we're kind of like Disney for artists, and we try to give you experiences and things. I love getting people together just to paint. And I think it's nice to have that sense of community where there's no training, no workshop, just people getting together to paint. So every year now for the last, I'd say 11 or 12 years, I've done an event in the Adirondacks of upstate New York, because I live there in the summer. And it's so beautiful. And I've painted there since I started painting. And it is so beautiful. So we get about 100 people together. We take over a local college. You stay in dorms. It's one price. You get all your meals. You get your place to stay and the event. And we paint all day in a couple different locations. And then we sit up at night after dinner. We have cocktails, or we play music. We paint portraits. We have a lot of fun. Anyway, I hope you'll join me for that. There's about half of the seats are still left. So we're right at 50 or 60 people already signed up. And last year, it was sold out because a lot of people were like ready to get out, and we did it safely. This year, we're going to do it safely. And so you can come. It's just go to paintadirondacks.com. That's paintadirondacks.com. Now it's time. Now, this is a very special person. Our guest today is Ned Mueller. Ned, welcome to the Plein Air Podcast.
Hi, how you doing?
Well, as you can tell, it's kind of busy these days.
Yeah, it sure is, man. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, so you and I said I'd talk about an origin story. I first met you. The Plein Air Painters of America was holding a workshop for about, I want to say 75 or 100 people in Old Lyme, Connecticut. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. I remember it was incredible. I never, they'd have 100 people painting out in this huge field. Somebody went over it with a plane and took some pictures of it. It was remarkable. It was just
well, now we could use drones, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was my very first entry into the plein air world. I don't even know how I learned about it because there was really no internet at the time. And the first workshop I took was with Ken Oster. Actually, you know what? I think the first one was Ken Oster, and that was Colorado, because you did it in Colorado too. So I think the old Lime second one I did. Anyway, I remember I did a workshop with you painting a horse, and I did a workshop with you painting an old yellow house. And you were really about the second or third workshop I ever took in my life.
Wow. Wow. That's fascinating. It's,
Well,
you're, we're so old and we're a history of things. I belong
speak
to
for yourself. I am not going to say that word.
Okay. Well, anyways, they talk about the quick draw, and it's so many of these shows. And I was part of the group that the quick draw originated in.
That's
the
right.
Northwest Rendezvous group. And it was original. People love the story. It was originally made so artists could have enough money to get gas to get home. And so they gave us 30 minutes to do the quick draw, and it was all drawing, if you had good drawing skills. And then they auctioned them off there.
And it was not painting, it was actually drawing.
Yeah, no paints, just drawings.
Wow.
And then it developed after that. They thought, well, we're going to make some money off. So we'd have 30, 35 artists doing it. And some artists didn't paint plein air, so they let them pre-paint, maybe 2/3 of it done, and then sign it. Some of the artists that did that, they were making $5,000-$6,000 off a quick draw.
Wow.
I remember Robert Bateman came in with a Peregrine Falcon, and we were standing there painting away, and we had about 10 or 20 people watching. As soon as he came in, he had an entourage that goes around with him, about 10 or 15 people. Then he had everybody saw that and took off and followed him down the hill. And we were kind of left there with a dog watching us. So anyways, I wanted to tell that story because, people have been asking me about it.
Well, you have you have a reputation that really is, for those who might not know, and I doubt if anybody doesn't know you, but you have become known as one of the great landscape painters of our time. And you're also, for those who don't know, you're also a really great figurative and portrait painter. Yeah. And I'm so honored that you're here.
Pardon?
I said, I'm honored that you're here.
Well, I'm honored to be here. I've only got one hearing aid now. The other one broke down. So,
all right. Well, I'll try to be clear.
Let's hope my colostomy bag doesn't overflow.
You have such a rich history and such a rich background. First off, what do you think about today's plein air movement? Because you really, the plein air had kind of died after the 1940s or so. You were part of that group that kind of brought it back to life. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, yeah, two groups, because the Northwest Rendezvous was around, and we were doing plein air. We would paint a week before the show, like in Glacier Park or Yellowstone. It was wonderful. We camped out, we slept in tents. But I know you're getting to the Plein Air Painters of America, and I got invited to that just after they started. Denise Burns started it all, and she was a great painter. And they invited me, and I was really busy at that time. I had all sorts of stuff going on, so I couldn't do it. And so about 5 years later, they asked me, I asked them, because they looked like they were having a lot of fun, and I could probably learn a lot from the other painters. So I finally joined. But yeah, they got it all started, and nobody knew it would grow like you. You have taken over and really made something out. This, like John Stern said, this is going to be remembered in history. People are going to talk about how somebody like you got this started. And it's
Well, I didn't get it started. I mean, it was you guys that got it started. I just kind of kicked the can down the road, if you will.
Yeah,
But you guys, I mean, I've heard some people say they didn't even call it plein air painting, years and years back. Do you recall the first time you ever went outside to paint?
Yeah, it was a disaster.
Yeah, it always is.
I went out with Bill Reese and Fred Oldfield, went up in the Cascades here, stayed on a ranch, and I was trying to paint this tree, and I was trying to paint every limb and this, and Fred and Bill just, had probably 2 paintings done in 3 hours, and I'd still painting on this tree 2 hours later. It's a good experience for anybody if you want to loosen up and you want to get some soul in your paintings. You're pretty much forced into it, which probably all of us need at times to get out of our comfort zone. So it was a great experience for me because it loosened me up. It taught me more about color. It was a turning point in my career. I'm sure it is in a lot of other people because you hear them say it. But
I'm going to ask you a question. I always get a lot of different answers to this question. There's probably not a right answer, but there's a lot of people out there because of the 1.5 million downloads of this, and because of the circulation of Plein Air magazine, and all the other things that are happening. There are a lot of people out there who've never gone plein air painting before, and some of them have never even painted before. If you've never painted before, do you recommend that they learn to paint inside before they ever go outside, or do you think they should just go for it and learn to paint outside from the beginning?
Yeah. Well, I've talked with other artists and seen what they taught. And I think the one way to learn about color and even drawing is to do a still life. I mean, people want to go outside. You can have your light. The light isn't going to change. You can go back there 2 weeks. It'll be the same. But I think that's valuable, is to set up a still life. There's an art to setting up a still life. How you arrange things. I know some artists will take 2 or 3 days to make a setup. And I think it's valuable. I just started one of my classes. I just started them doing still lifes. And, I encourage them, be brave. You don't have to have everything in a picture frame, get different size objects, look for the right value of these. You may want the same color tone and the same value in a section, some big objects, little objects. I mean, that's a lot of just plain good training. And
I was just talking to someone, I can't remember who, and they had a plein air group that they would meet. They were a fair weather plein air group, right? They would meet when the weather was nice, but in the winter they would stop meeting, and they lose that sense of camaraderie. But they're also not painting together, which of course is beneficial because you're learning from one another. And they started, somebody said, well, there's a local arts center we can use. And they started getting together in the wintertime and painting still lifes. They set up still lifes, and they'd all paint that still life. And they actually found that made them better plein air painters.
Yeah. And the other thing, they should do black and whites first.
Good idea.
Listen, what I'd like to tell my students is, how long did the old masters paint in black and white? And they look at each other. 4 years, 4 bloody years before they used color. And I was in art school. They didn't let us use color until after 2 years. And our first assignment was 3 white eggs on an off blue plate. But that's good training, value.
Did you go to Art Center?
Yeah, it was the Harvard of the art schools.
Oh yeah, what a great school. And who were your teachers?
Oh gosh, Joe Henniger, I was an illustration. But the school, they were all working professionals, really made a difference, all working in the business. And they had high standards. I know if you didn't reach their standard, they asked you to leave. They asked
Really?
one of my best friends to leave, but it was actually a favor. He wanted to play or coach football, so he did. But yeah, it was hard to get into and even harder to get out of it. I was lucky. I loved to draw. I started when I was 4 years old. And so I had a portfolio of these drawings mostly, and I could draw pretty good and not so good with color, obviously. And we were poor. And so they said, yeah, yeah. My dad took me down. He said, if you're going to go to an art school, you want to go to the very best one you can, because that's who you're competing in when you get out. And that was wise advice. I mean, I just didn't have any confidence, but and they gave me a scholarship.
Oh,
The problem with
fabulous.
having a scholarship, then you had to go straight through, and they just pile on the homework. And about the sixth, seventh semester, I didn't hand in one assignment because I hit the wall. I just, there was no gas left in the tank. So it was an amazing
Oh, what
experience.
a great training ground, because the training is preparing you for real life. You were a professional illustrator,
Yeah.
and you probably had people call you and say, "Listen, I need an illustration tomorrow," and you had to scramble.
Yeah, and drawing was the key. If you learn how to draw well, or one instructor told us, to Joe Henniger, if you learn how to draw well, you never have trouble getting a job, and he's been right. I've done all sorts of things. I was a courtroom artist. I did architectural renderings. I did all sorts of stuff, but I was able to survive. And even like when I got out of the service and was kind of screwed up, I just went to drawing sessions at night. And the other thing is, you don't have to draw the figure. If you're doing landscapes, all this business is about sharpening your eye.
So if you don't have the benefit of going to the art center or to an art school, of course, things have changed considerably since you were in school. Now we have all these online trainings and videos and other things. But what is your best advice in terms of learning to draw? Can you do it on your own, or do you need that feedback from a third party to help you get correction and see what you can't see?
I think if you get with a good instructor, you're going to probably learn better, 5 times if you're just learning on your own. I mean, I'm just saying that somebody that knows what you need. The problem is, had an art school artist. He had an art school in Joe Brazier had an art school in Chicago, and he told me, Ned, you got to give people what they need, not what. No, they got to give them what they want, not what they need, because they don't want to hear what they need.
It's true.
Because what they need is 10 or 20 years to get good.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear that. I did some articles with the art magazines, and I would say, you got to have my 3 Ps: patience, practice, and perseverance. And they didn't want to hear that stuff because it was too difficult. So when I sent articles in, they kept that stuff out because they didn't want to. They didn't want to lose all their customers, because that's the reality of this. As you well know, it takes time.
Well, you and I first met probably over 20 years ago. And I'm just now starting to get to a point where I feel like I'm starting to get proficient. And we there I can teach anybody how to paint, or almost anybody how to paint, and teach them the systems fairly rapidly, but it's the practice and the perseverance that's going to make all the difference. And the way I look at it is, hey, at least you're painting. You know, you're having fun, you're making mistakes, but at least you're painting and you're going through a process. And I think that, you know, we do. I agree. You need to have the ability to have time. I know people though. I was in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, a couple of weeks ago, and
Wow,
I
good
walked
for
through this
you.
gallery area, and I see this painter, and he's doing absolutely phenomenal work. And he looks like he's, you know, early 30s. And I said, "You look like you've been classically trained. Did you go to something like Florence Academy or something like that?" He says, "No, I learned everything I know. I learned by myself, and and I've only been painting for 4 years." And I said, "Well, I was a little suspect of that because, you know, when you hear somebody say they're self-taught, and so I probed it a little bit." And he said, "Well, I learned everything I know by taking online courses." And then I said, "Well, which online courses do you take?" And he popped up my app with PaintTube, and he'd been studying under Cesar Santos in my app.
Yeah.
But he managed to, you know, he applied himself and he managed to do it. And now to a trained eye, like yours or like mine, you know, there's a lot of lessons he still needs to learn, but you can get fairly proficient. But it's that time, you know, just, you know, beating on it every single day.
Most artists' biggest complaint is they don't have the time they'd like to paint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you have that problem?
Not really. With my health issues and stuff, 81, I don't have the energy I used to have, but I still get a lot of drawing and painting in. Probably not as much as I was younger, but you know, the other thing with me, it's a relief for me because it's all I focus on. You know, I'm not thinking of my chronic pain. I'm not thinking about anything else, how tired I am or whatever. So it just being an artist is really lucky for older people. And that's why so many old people get into it because
So
they're
do
just
do
having
you
fun.
find that the way you paint today is considerably different than the way you used to paint?
Yeah, it's the yeah, I mean, you never stop learning. You know, they asked Monet once, I don't know if it's a wives' tale or not, but they asked him, he was 85, and they said, you know, well, what do you think about your painting? And he says, well, I think I'm just getting the handle of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we have 300, I mean, we're never going to get what we want to do because we reach a level and, you know, start getting a little bored, you know, well, Jesus, this is, you know, I want to try something else. And
So
my
how do
everything
you
that
push
Karen has told
yourself?
me, Karen has told me, she says, you know, you are just the most curious people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And that's true. Curiosity. And, you know, I was one of these guys that always wanted to go over the next mountain, see what was there. And I haven't lost that. So, and the other thing, I do a lot of different things because I'm curious, but I've always been able to do a lot of things well because I learned how to draw well, and that can cover up a lot of sins, you know. But the other thing I have to say is, you know, good drawing can get in the way of creativity
Yeah.
because it
So
can become a crutch.
you're a very high level painter, in my opinion. What's your advice on how you push yourself to the next level and then the next level beyond there? What's that process look like?
Time, you know, you want to you see other things that are being done. You think, Jesus, you know, there's some much great stuff going on out there. I mean, uh, geez, some of these young artists, I don't know what it is, but you know, the training I got was really great, you know, and it's accepted everything, but there's people that are going beyond this with all these skills and doing some wonderful things. And so I'm trying some stuff. But, the other thing, it takes time. If you want to change, you want to be more impressionistic, or you want to combine more abstract, which I kind of do anyways. But, how far can you go? And is it really the right thing to do? People say, well, why do you want to change? You're doing great with what you're doing. I said, I don't know. I kept thinking I should be doing something better. I'm sure a lot of artists feel that. It's a great subject. We ought to get a panel to talk about how artists feel. I was watching your podcast with Larry Moore, and I thought that was just a great interview. You guys were talking about all that, and I think we just, for artists' sake, to understand that, if they want to change, can they change? It gets a little bit harder when you get older. So, I may be chasing, who's the Ichabod, not Ichabod, was chasing windmills.
Yeah.
I think it's artists, we're doing that every day.
Well, Richard Schmid told me, I don't remember what age Richard was when he told me this, but he was probably mid-70s.
I said that.
And he said, I used to waste a lot of time as an artist making mistakes. And he said, now I'm much more deliberate. He said, once I lay the paint down, he said, I'm slower, more deliberate. I measure things more. I mix the paint more. But once I lay things down, I leave it alone. But he said, then I don't have to go back and correct it. Do you find that you kind of go through that same type of experience because you have so much practice under your belt, or do you still go in there randomly and make a lot of mistakes?
Yeah, it's just a process, making mistakes. That's why I'm a big thing on value studies and color studies, because you get rid of, at my age, I wanted to get rid of the bad paintings, and figured I could cut that down. I could do more value studies, color studies. You get your idea down, you get something down so you can see if it's right or wrong. Instead of starting on a 24 by 30 painting, you work these out, because I don't know many artists and you just sit down on a big painting and have it come out. But I do value studies like you're seeing here and work out the design and the changes I want to need, the values. And I'll do 20 or 30 of them and then do the best of that, 10 or 12 of those, and do color studies, then maybe do a finished painting. But you also find after a while, you start doing value study and color study. You've done the game twice. You played the game twice and doing a larger paintings. So I often just finish up my color studies. And I can't work too big anyways because of my injuries, like just that movement.
Right.
Standing up, so I'm mostly sitting down. And
so you have a process that involves photography, value studies. Do you want to just articulate that a little bit more?
Yeah, taking photographs, amazing how people don't know how to take a good photo. I take a photo like I'm making a painting. I'll walk around, look for different angles. Something like this where the camel is coming at you. I guess I'm not supposed to talk. Camel coming at you. It's a little different. You got to shoot very quick. But so I take the photographs and compose them as best I can, like a painting. At least that. But I'll also take pictures of things that are around it that maybe I could use in the back. I am in a Mexican market. I'll take pictures of flowers and oranges and all sorts of stuff. and to work back in the studio. And then I'll do value studies. I'll pick out the best stuff and kind of think about it. I'll put value studies down, color studies that I've changed a year later because I wanted to, but I've just learned that helps me do a more successful painting if I think it out and work it out. I mean, some people don't want to do that. That want to sit down and that's the great thing about plein air. Sit down and, get that spontaneous, wonderful feeling. But, I've done so much plein air and studio work that, a lot of people can't tell the difference between my studio and plein air work.
But you can tell the difference between their studio and plein air work.
Pretty much. I think any good painter can probably tell.
There's always a debate about use of photographs, and sometimes like the camel is a great example where you snap it because it was a serendipitous event that you just had to grab. I'm always doing that while I'm driving, taking photographs, but it's that learning plein air painting and seeing light and color that you can't see in the photograph that really makes a difference. I've told this story many times, but Nikolai Dubovik, the Russian master, teaches at the Sarakov Academy in Moscow. He walked into my studio and he went, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you did those plein air, the rest you did from photographs. And I thought he was right. And I couldn't tell the difference, but he could. And so it's really all about that, getting outdoors and practicing. If you're going to use photographs, knowing how the light and shape and form responds. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, my studio work helped my plein air, and my plein air work helped my studio. I think that's best way I can see it. But lately, because of the COVID, we haven't gotten out.
Yeah,
I was traveling all over the world and painting, before my injury and everything. And we still get out and paint, but I noticed, through this winter, we didn't go anywhere to paint out. We went outside the yard, painted a couple times.
Well, that'll start to change, hopefully.
But I noticed my paintings, the studio paintings, were tightening up, and I wasn't happy with it, and I need to get outside again, or just even what I've been doing is just painting in the studio of objects in the studio. Just something that comes up, because if you're trained right, like I say, all this, the drawing, everything, all we're doing is improving our judgment. When you're drawing or painting, you're improving your judgment, which improves your painting, your ability to see and compose and all that stuff. All this business is improving, and that's pretty much sharpening our eye and sharpening our judgment. What is good, what is bad?
Talk to me a little bit about some of the inspiration paintings or painters that have inspired you throughout your career. I'm curious who you're drawing on. You oftentimes hear the same names, but sometimes you hear names that we don't think about. Who are the ones that have really inspired you?
Gosh, I think I listed about 10 of them. I can think of so many. Arkhipov.
Arkhipov?
Yeah. He mostly does figures. Just does beautiful figures. And, oh, man, yeah, they're inspiring. I mean, he's like a fetching,
This is a living artist.
No, he's painting, I would think, back in the 50s and 60s.
And probably a Russian.
Yeah. There's a Anders Zorn most people have heard of.
Yeah. Tell me what inspires you about Zorn.
Well, look at that figure. I mean, I'll quit saying that. Yeah, it's just the freshness, I wouldn't be surprised that he did that from life.
Yeah.
You know, and that's an incredible painting. That's one of my favorites of his. It's just takes your life, take your breath away. The other ones would be Antonio Mancini.
I love him. I discovered him when I was in Europe. I had no idea he existed. What an incredible artist he was.
Yeah, this painting is at the what's the museum in Boston that the gal was friends with all these guys.
Oh, Gardner.
Yeah, the Gardner Museum. This is in there, but they're whatever they call it, their covenant, they can't put lights on these things. So this thing is, almost laying on the floor and in the dark. I mean, it's shameful what goes on there, but great paintings in there if nobody's been there.
Mancini reminds me very much of the Russians and of Feshin. If you look at, I saw a large body of his work in Europe, and this was during that period of time when he had literally gone insane. But everything was just, splatters and abstract shapes, but those faces were pretty tight. They were still done abstractly, but they were tight. And you look at Zorn, it's almost the same way. But this was, Zorn isn't as tight in the face as Mancini is, but everything just then explodes. There's so much energy. His work is so incredible.
Yeah, same with Fetchin.
Yeah.
Fetchin, Pradilla Ortiz is amazing, and nobody's heard of him. That's a Fetchin. Incredible still life.
Now you you said you're 81. You have had an opportunity to encounter you've been an artist most of your life, so you've had encounters with some people who had some pretty great reputations throughout time. You missed Feshin, right? Feshin was gone by the time you got into this.
Yeah. Well, he died in, I think, 54.
54. Okay.
Well, when I first saw his paintings, the Fry Museum here has a big collection of his. And when I first saw Fetchin, I thought, this guy's a hack. Because you'd see the canvas. You could see the canvas. And what artist would ever let you see the canvas covered up? And he's, now I see his genius,
And what is it that changed in you that made you go from saying this guy's a hack to this guy's a genius? Was it your own development? Because I think when we start out as painters, I can only speak for myself, but when I started out as a painter, I was trying to be almost photorealistic, lots and lots of details and little tiny brush strokes. And then, over time, at least in my case, I loosen up, I become less concerned about that. Is that the kind of thing, when you saw Feshin for the first time, you personally were not developed enough to appreciate it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. In my own career in teaching, when I can get the students to not think so literally, like a mountain is a mountain, trees are trees, and when I can see them as more of an interesting arrangements of shapes and colors, and that's my definition of a good painting. I mean, it's not the greatest, but when people ask me that, I tell them that, and it kind of covers all kind of painting: abstract, traditional, classical, impressionistic, expression. It's an interesting or compelling arrangements of shapes and colors. And so when I get the students to think that way, instead of, having to paint every little detail and seeing arrangements of shapes and colors including value arrangement, then they start seeing more possibilities of paintings. There's possibilities of paintings wherever you go, and then you have the knowledge or the wisdom to interpret it in your own voice, which really makes a difference. And that also your own voice. It's just wonderful. Teaching so much, I found out, I enjoy teaching very much. I mean, I found out that I love. They had me teaching when I was in art center school, and making money and teaching what I love. I mean, I never thought I'd ever do that. But I forgot what I was going to say now. That's a problem of being 81. Senior months instead of senior.
Oh, well.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about, what I was going to ask you about was you were talking about rearranging shapes. I was going to ask you about learning design and how do you learn that? Is that something that is all about a feel, or is there a formula that you kind of follow?
Okay, I guess best I could say, like somebody playing golf, you got to learn all the swings and, how hold it, or playing tennis. You kind of hold it piece by piece. And still, like in baseball, I was a pitcher. You have to learn the right style for you and all that. But then you have to let it all go. You learn all this stuff, and then there's 3 stages, I say, of painting. The first stage, you paint what you know. I do a portrait workshop. 9 times out of 10, a beginner I could have the head turned at an angle like that. A beginner will paint it straight on, because that's what they know. That's what they see in the mirror.
Right.
So, and are the same with landscapes. And I tell them, then paint what you see. In a landscape, they paint what they know. They always paint the sky blue, and the shadows are cool, but you go in the shade to get cool. And then they learn to see. Most shadows are warm. Sky, it can be yellow sometimes. Grass can be orange. And the best stage is the 3rd stage. You paint what you feel. But everybody,
that's a hard one to get to.
Yeah, everybody wants to paint the 3rd stage. They want to be this great impressionist painting, and they want to do it in 2 weeks.
So how do you make that leap to painting what you feel?
Just go through those other stages.
Yeah.
Go through and just let it go. I think it just happens. You just feel, some people get there quicker. We're all different. And so, yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer that.
That kind of goes in line with the question about how do you develop your own personal style. What the answer I oftentimes get is you don't. It finds you.
Yeah, that's a good answer as any. But I think the important thing is they get away from being so literal. The trouble is, so many buyers are just so naive about art that they think a great painting looks like a photograph, the greater it is, and it's just the opposite.
Well, thank goodness for that.
So many artists get caught up in that because they're making sales with that. It takes a lot of courage to just be yourself and paint whatever you love and how you love. I had to, even as an illustrator, I had assignments. Like even when I worked for Disney, there was millions of dollars at stake, and I was doing, blue sky paintings, big, huge paintings of what the park would look like before it was built. And, I had to do what they wanted. And sometimes they changed it halfway through because it was too expensive. But they paid me for it too. Anyway, so you don't do that in fine arts either. I guess the difference is, I got into fine art. A lot of people get into fine art so they could just do what they want. But that doesn't always work out. So sometimes you have to paint what you think might sell. because you have to pay the bills, and
Oh, I know it, and it's a great debate, and it's thankfully there are some people who are at different stages of their development as buyers because that way younger, less established artists have a chance to sell something, even though they may be being very photorealistic or something. But I think that this is a great debate. I don't think there's a solution to it, but I oftentimes say in my marketing seminars at the convention, at least you're painting. If you have to paint what sells to pay the bills, at least you're not going out and cleaning toilets to pay the bills. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but at least you're painting. You're getting experience. You're painting. You're doing something. But I think the ultimate goal is it sounds to me like from all the interviews I've done with artists, it sounds to me like it gets to that point that once somebody is painting what they love and what they really want to do, it resonates so well that it increases their sales over time.
right.
Because their paintings are better because they love what they're doing more rather than painting something that they don't care about.
Yeah. 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 Most of us end up doing that unless you have you find out a lot of people are really creative. They have large trust funds. They don't have to worry,
Wouldn't that be nice?
they can just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing workshops. I know you're not doing a lot of them, but you have a big one coming up in Montana in June.
Yeah.
And that's a landscape workshop.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I've been doing it about the last 3 years through Scottsdale Art School. And
Yeah.
it's just beautiful. The road goes up. We stay in cabins farther down near Cook City, but the road goes up to just under 11,000 feet. I mean, it's incredible scenery. It's just remarkable. And it's what else was I going to say about it? But yeah,
Well,
we've been lucky with the weather. This is a scene up on top. They're near the top. This is at
Nice.
about 9,000 feet. And last
So-
year we were lucky. We've been having good weather all 5 days, that middle of June. And this is one of our favorite spots because it's just full of material. It's surrounded by mountains. It's just a marvelous place. I'd encourage anybody. We get cheaper cabins that are $110. They have a cafe there. But yeah, I enjoy going back there.
What do you find that most workshop students have in common that they need to work on?
Drawing.
Yeah,
Mostly drawing. I might say I do classes online here. I'm not at the studio. It's online, and I do it through the studio on Wednesday morning. Then I do workshops, online still around the country but I've got them listed all on my website.
Okay, and that is what?
www.nedmueller.com.
Okay. All right. And then Instagram, it's at Ned Mueller 06. Facebook, it's Ned Mueller Fine Art.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Ned, I would love for this to go on forever. I think you and I could probably stretch this out for many, many more hours in terms of great content, but you've given us a really good starting point, and we'll have you back again for another one so that we can continue the discussion. Before we wrap up, you've been plein air painting most of your life. Is there a special plein air moment that you can remember where, it was just really special to you for some reason or something happened? Just curious.
Oh gosh.
I know you weren't prepared for that question.
Well, no, I've heard you ask it before. So I just don't know how to answer that. There's been quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly I'll say the last 10 years that's really kept me going is meeting my wife, Karen. She's just been a blessing, and she's an artist too, and really good. She's getting better than I am. I'm beginning to hate her. Got to break her arm. But
Well,
yeah, that's probably for me, my situation, or you'll meet an artist, or people have discovered your magazine or discover these podcasts. That could be I'm sure a lot of people, and you may not have heard from them, that have got this from you. And you've done some, I know how it feels. We started an art league, and I was president for 5 years, and it was, people only paid $200 a month. We had models every day, life drawing sessions, and we had 150 members. Good thing only 30 or 35 were active, because you couldn't have a model there with 150 members showing up. So anyways, maybe we can get together and paint sometime.
I'd like that. We need to figure that out, and I'll be watching. I won't be painting. I'll be watching.
We can come up here. The summers are beautiful.
Yeah, I'd like that. Yeah, the only time you don't get rain.
And Karen makes a wonderful Irish stew.
Oh, okay.
And
Karen.
Irish coffee.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, it does.
Ned, thank you so much for being on the Plein Air Podcast today. I'm really honored that you would do it. And thank you. I just want to acknowledge you. The second time I went to Plein Air Painters of America event was Old Lyme. And it was at that event that I got the idea for creating Plein Air magazine, because I was there and I saw all these people who were, passionate and interested about plein air painting. And I thought, well, there's a lot of people. Turned out there weren't quite enough at the time, but we've since tried to change that a little bit. Now I think there's a lot of people painting in plein air. I don't know how many, but hundreds of thousands. And
not your spot guaranteed in heaven. I don't necessarily believe in God, but you'll probably go to heaven there. I'm not sure I will.
Well, I don't think that's how I'm going to get into heaven, but it's very kind of you to say.
Yeah.
I will just tell you this, that I became so joy-filled once I started plein air painting. I was frustrated as heck, but I became joy-filled, and I just, every chance I got when I started that, plus 20 plus years ago probably, I haven't stopped, and I still go out plein air painting. I'm still excited about it, and it has given me a wonderful life, and I want others to find that joy. I just don't, I'm not a golfer. I used to be, but if I'm outdoors, I'm painting, I'm not golfing. Plein air is the new golf, as I like to say, but it there's something, because it's satisfying to your soul, because you're being creative, you're learning, you're growing, you're stretching yourself every day painting. And so thank you for the compliment. I just want others to find it, because it's been good for me. And you have been a terrific inspiration to me and to all of us. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Eric. And have a good week.
All right. Our guest today has been Ned Mueller.
And
And Ned, thank you so much again. We are honored that you would be here. Well, it's time now for the Marketing Minute.
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
Well, thanks for the mention on that, Jim Kipping. By the way, I'm working on another book. All right, just saying. Might take me, who knows how long it'll take me. So in the Marketing Minute, my goal is to answer your art marketing questions. Art marketing is what leads to art sales. And, You're always welcome to upload a question on video. You can just go to artmarketing.com/questions, or you can email them to me, eric@artmarketing.com. That's always nice to have you do that. But in the meantime, my producer from France, Amadine, is going to read the questions that we don't have video on. And it's kind of hard to read the slide, but she's going to read it for us. Amadine, take it away.
So the first question is from Rick Wallace. I've become a very popular amateur artist in the Dallas area. I only go out and sell my art twice a month for 6 hours at a time in a downtown park. No galleries, no online, no festivals. Last Saturday was a slow day and I sold 39 originals on canvas. Most of them are 48 by 36 or larger. The average price is $122 each. Yes, it's super cheap. I buy used canvases and acrylic paint. I paint fast and I have a job, so this is not my only source of income. I'm not losing money. But breaking from this category of interesting, large, and cheap is not going to be easy. Do you have any ideas?
Okay, Rick. So I do have some ideas, and I just want to tell you, first off, be careful of the stories that you tell yourself. Your story was breaking from this category of interesting, large, and cheap is not going to be easy. That's a story. It's going to be easy. It's not, let's change that. It's going to be simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And you just have to learn a process. Now, the good news is you have discovered something that I've never heard anybody talking about doing before. I've seen artists on the street selling stuff, but I never really thought about that. You have disciplined yourself to go out certain times a month, twice a month, staying for 6 hours and putting your originals out there and selling them. And yeah, you're only getting $122 each and especially for a 48 by 36, which is huge, but at least you're getting experience and finding out what do people resonate with? What do they like? What do they don't like? What paintings really speak to people? You're learning a little bit about that, and you're getting paid to practice. At least you're covering the expense of your canvas and you're covering the expense of your paint, and you're getting paid to practice. That's a beautiful thing. But if you want to make it into the big leagues, you got to make the leap. And so how do you make the leap? Well, just remember one thing. There are a lot of artists I know who are not making bank, right? So you sold 39 originals at $122 each. That's nice. You made $5,000, just $5,000 in your pocket. And now that you're doing that twice a month, right? So you're making $10,000 a month. I know a lot of artists who are professionals that are not still making $10,000 a month. There are a lot who are. The one thing you could do is that artists never have confidence to raise their prices. And learning to raise your prices is an important discipline, and you have the perfect venue for experimenting with it. First off, they're getting a tremendous value. I don't know if your paintings are any good or not. I've not seen them, but you're giving a big value for a big painting. And if you eventually want to sell these people more expensive paintings, you might have a harder time doing that. But what I would do right off the bat is if you changed your price from $122 each to, let's say, $150 each, what is that, 28 bucks more? If you times that times the 39 paintings you sold, you're going to make an extra $1,000 without doing any extra work. And nobody's going to have that price resistance going from 122 to 150, probably not the same people buying each time. And then, try going from 150 to 175 or 200 and get into the habit. I was talking to David LaFell one time, and I learned the story about how he got his prices up. I said, how did it happen? He said, I had a painting, it didn't sell. I took it out of the gallery. I gave it to another gallery. I doubled the price. It still didn't sell. I took it out of that gallery. I gave it to another gallery. I doubled the price. It didn't sell. So finally, I took it out, gave it to another gallery, and I 10x'd the price, and it sold immediately. There are people out there who don't think like you and I think, people who are not price sensitive, people who are willing to pay value for something of value to them. And sometimes price sends a signal. A low price sends a signal that this is too cheap. A high price sends a signal that this is really good. So be thinking in terms of that. What you can do is look to these people. What else can I get out of them? Well, first off, how could you leverage that? If you can get their email addresses and their names, then you can get them on a newsletter and start talking about your art. Because there's something I want you to remember, and that is this phrase. You've had it. If you've ever driven into McDonald's, here's the phrase. Do you want fries with that? Okay, what that means is there's always an opportunity to sell something else. McDonald's makes billions of dollars more by saying, do you want, do you want fries with that? So what you can do is, if somebody buys a painting, can you figure out how to get a second painting? Can you say, hey, since you bought one, you automatically get a special discount on the second one? You can do that. Get them to buy two. Now, less effort, more money. But eventually you build a collector base. Now you've got a collector base. You've got all these people. You start talking to them. You start talking about raising your prices. You're going to be fine. But eventually, as you get into galleries, this is going to be great training for you. But the most important thing to remember is that if you're, if you're selling too inexpensively, you might hurt the overall marketplace. You might hurt other artists. And you could say, well, that's okay, I'm getting the money. But you want to be part of a community. And that community of artists is building everybody up. So practice those things. Abedin, what's our next question?
Our second question is from Holly from Tennessee. I've only just graduated from art school and I am working to create a body of work for a gallery and a website. I don't have a lot of money for canvases. One hack I've heard of is buying old paintings at thrift stores and painting over them. Is this a good idea, or does it cheapen the quality overall?
Well, listen, Holly from Tennessee, the most important thing you can do right now, you're fresh out of art school, is the most important thing you can do is paint as much as you possibly can. Practice, 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 practice. And whatever you practice on doesn't matter. A good painting is a good painting, no matter what the surface it's on. Now, you want the painting to last. There are painters who will paint on cardboard. I have a whole collection of Russian paintings that were done in the post-Soviet era when they had no money and they couldn't get canvas. They paint on cardboard. They paint on the back of Coca-Cola signs. I mean, anything and everything. If people see and recognize a good painting that stimulates something in them and makes them want to own it, that's all that matters. Now, if you're buying canvases in mass from Goodwill or something, and you're painting over them, I see nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, you might be able to get some cool and interesting texture underneath your paintings that will make them better. And you might have to cover up the back, right? Because there may be an inscription on the back, something. So, might have to take some brown paper and glue it on or something. But you just do whatever it takes. There's not a right or wrong. What matters is getting yourself out there. You've got to put yourself out there. Everybody's like, well, I'm not ready to put myself out there. I know artists who they just didn't feel like they were ever ready. And there's something to that. You want to be ready, but you also want to be getting yourself out there, because it takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, however many years to get experiences in learning to sell your artwork and learning how to deal with customers and learning how to present it and learning how to deal with galleries. And, all of that, the sooner you can make those lessons stick, the better off you're going to be. Yes, you do want to get to a point where your artwork is acceptable to sell, but that's a matter of opinion. because some people will see it and go, it's great. Others will see it and say it's not cooked yet. One thing you can do is ask someone who's a professional, somebody who's like an editor of a magazine or somebody who's like a gallery curator or owner or something like that. You can ask them, say, you send them an email, say, could I pay you a little bit of money to critique my painting? Don't tell me the good stuff. Tell me what's bad that I need to fix so that you get an outside opinion. And most importantly, you want to find out when you're ready. And when you're ready, get yourself out there, because the sooner you get your foot in the water and get some experience, it's like learning to swim, right? When I learned to swim, my swim instructor picked me up. I was 5 years old and he threw me into the pool. He said, okay, get yourself out. And I had to learn to swim real quickly, right? So we might as well jump into the bath of fire. Okay, anyway, that is the Art Marketing Minute.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
I want to remind you guys that we're all going to meet at the Plein Air Convention in May. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's only 97 seats left. Make sure to go to pleinairconvention.com. Also, if you want to be included on this monumental trip to New Zealand to paint for, I think we're going to paint for 10 days. Go to paintingnewzealand.com. Find out more about that. It's paintingnewzealand.com. And last but not least, this summer in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York, it is stunningly beautiful. And we have like two groups that go out. We have the A group and the B group, or the, one group is kind of roadside painting for people who can't walk through, walk over rocks. The other group, it's not a lot of heavy stuff, but we do go down some gullies or up some hills and things. But we all get together at certain spots. We paint together, and we're painting together groups every day. It's a lot of fun. And then we play at night, which is also a lot of fun. So just go to paintadirondacks.com. All right. Thank you guys for listening. I want to thank Ned Mueller. He was absolutely fabulous. He's a true inspiration, one of our greats. We're so honored to have him today. I'm the publisher of Plein Air Magazine, which you can find on the newsstands. Thank you for your time today. Remember, it is a big world out there. Go paint it. Bye-bye.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.